Yorkshire, autumn of 1820. The rain had been falling for days, soft, unending, like the sky itself was mourning. Inside a small cottage on the edge of the moors, Lady Charlotte Harland sat by the fire, her fingers tracing the worn edges of an old letter. The ink had faded, but she knew every word by heart. It was the last letter she had ever received from her husband, Captain James Harland, heir to the Marquess of Ravensby. He had written it from the battlefield, his words full of hope, love, and promises that would never be kept, or so she had believed. For 6 years, the world had called her the widow of Ravensby. She had built a quiet life, raising their twin sons alone in secrecy. Far from the cold judgment of the aristocracy that had once rejected her, she taught them how to read by the firelight, how to ride on borrowed ponies, how to laugh, even when the world offered little reason to. But peace never lasts forever. That morning, a letter had arrived, sealed in red wax, bearing a crest she hadn't seen since the day she ran away from Ravensby Hall. The Ravensby crest. With trembling hands, she broke the seal. Her breath caught as she read the first line. By order of His Lordship, the Marquess of Ravensby, you are requested to present yourself and your children, at Ravensby Hall, within the Her heart stopped. It couldn't be. The Marquess, James's father, had died years ago. The title now belonged to his only surviving son. Her husband. James Harland. The man she had buried in her heart. The man everyone swore had perished in Portugal. The man whose body had never been found. He was alive, and he knew about the children. Charlotte clutched the letter to her chest, as her sons, Henry and Arthur, played near the hearth, their dark curls and storm-gray eyes so painfully familiar, it almost hurt to look at them. If this letter was true, then the man she had loved, mourned, and finally learned to live without, was coming back. But would he return as the man she once knew? Or as the Marquess who now held power to take away everything she loved? The rain outside grew heavier, each drop a warning. Her past was riding toward her, and this time, there would be no escape. The rain had stopped by the time the carriage arrived. Ravensby Hall rose ahead of her, vast, cold, and beautiful. The kind of place that had been built not for comfort, but for power. Lady Charlotte Harland hadn't seen it in 6 long years. Not since the night she'd fled into the dark, carrying nothing but her unborn children, and the memory of the man who'd sworn to return to her. Now she was back. Not as a guest, not as a wife, but as the mother of the Marquess's heirs, and the woman he might no longer recognize. The great oak doors opened before she could lift the knocker. A butler she didn't know bowed stiffly. His lordship awaits you in the west drawing-room, my lady. Her breath caught at those words. His lordship, not the late Marquis, not the heir apparent, her husband alive. She followed the servant through long corridors lined with portraits of Ravensby ancestors, their painted eyes cold with the weight of centuries. Her sons, Henry and Arthur, clutched her hands, sensing her unease. When the butler pushed open the doors, time stopped. He was there. James Harland, now the Marquess of Ravensby. He stood by the fire, tall and impossibly composed, his uniform replaced by a dark coat that fit him like it had been made by destiny itself. His hair was longer now, threaded with silver near the temples, and a faint scar traced his cheek, a silent witness to the years he had been gone. But his eyes, those gray eyes she had dreamed of every night, were the same. They met hers, and the air seemed to vanish from the room. For a heartbeat, neither spoke. Then, softly, like a man afraid the moment might shatter, he said, "Charlotte." Her knees nearly gave way at the sound of her name on his lips. It had been so long since anyone had said it like that, with reverence, with longing, with the echo of everything they had lost. She tried to speak, but no words came. Instead, she guided their sons forward. "James," she whispered, "these are your children, Henry and Arthur." The boys bowed awkwardly, uncertain of the tall man who looked at them as if seeing ghosts made flesh. For a moment, James couldn't move. His throat worked, but no sound emerged. Then he dropped to one knee before them, his gloved hands trembling as he touched their shoulders. "They have your eyes," he said hoarsely. "Dear God, I thought I'd never—" He broke off, looking up at her with something raw and unguarded. Grief, joy, disbelief all at once. "I thought I'd never see you again." Charlotte's composure cracked. "You were dead, James. They said you died at Cell—" "I nearly did," he said quietly. "But the truth is crueler. I was taken. Held in Spain for years. I only returned to England months ago, and when I learned you had disappeared, I thought I had lost you forever." He rose to his full height, the firelight carving sharp lines across his face. "And then I discovered," his gaze flicked to the boys, "that you had hidden them from me." The warmth between them turned brittle. Charlotte stiffened. "I did what I had to. Your father made it clear I was never welcome here. If I had stayed, they would have taken the children. I would not let them grow up believing their mother was unworthy of them." James's jaw clenched, torn between anger and understanding. "My father was a hard man," he admitted, "and I have spent years trying not to become him." Silence stretched, heavy and fragile. The only sound was the crackle of the fire and the soft breathing of the children. Then James spoke again, his tone lower, steadier. "You should have trusted me, Charlotte." Her eyes filled with tears. "I did. I trusted you to come back, and when you didn't, I trusted myself to keep them safe." Something in him softened. He stepped closer, close enough that she could see the scar beneath his jaw, the exhaustion in his eyes. "I never stopped thinking of you," he said. "Even when I believed you'd moved on. You and the boys, you were the only thing that kept me alive." Charlotte's resolve faltered. She wanted to believe him, wanted to believe that love could survive the ruin of time and distance. But she had lived 6 years, learning how to stand alone. "You came back for them," she said quietly. "Not for me." He hesitated, the truth visible in his eyes before he could hide it. "I came back," he said finally, "for what's mine. My sons, my family, my name, and that includes you, Charlotte. Whether you like it or not." The words hit her like a blow. She looked at the man she had once loved more than life itself, the man who had died in her arms and dreams, and now stood before her in the flesh, and realized that love and fear had become the same thing. Because the Marquis of Ravensby had returned. And this time, he wasn't the man she remembered. He was something else entirely. A man forged by loss. A man who had learned to command, not beg. A man who might claim her heart again, or destroy it. The next morning Ravensby Hall was cloaked in mist. The autumn light filtered pale and uncertain through the tall windows of the breakfast room, where silence reigned, the kind of silence that came before a storm. Lady Charlotte Harland sat rigidly, her hands folded around a cup of untouched tea. Across from her, the Marquess of Ravensby watched her with the calm intensity of a man used to command. 6 years apart, and now they shared a table like strangers bound by ghosts. The children had already been taken to the nursery, at the Marquess's polite but unmistakable insistence. Whatever conversation was about to happen, it was not for young ears. Finally, he spoke. "You mean to leave?" It wasn't a question. Charlotte looked up sharply. "I only came because your letter demanded it. You have seen the boys, now you know the truth. There is nothing else to keep us here. Nothing." His voice was soft, but dangerous. "Not even me." She drew a steadying breath. "You were not the man I married." His lips curved, not in amusement, but in bitter acknowledgement. "No, war changed me, captivity changed me, but so did losing you." "Losing me?" she repeated, her voice breaking. "James, I buried you in my heart. I mourned you every night while I raised your sons alone. You speak of loss as though you had a choice. I had none." Something flickered in his eyes, pain, regret, maybe even guilt, but it vanished as quickly as it came. "I did not summon you here to trade sorrows," he said finally. "I summoned you because the world must now see what is rightfully mine." Charlotte went still. "What do you mean?" He stood, every inch the nobleman, the soldier, the Marquise. "You and our sons belong at Ravensby Hall. Their legitimacy must be publicly recognized. They are the future of this house, and they will not be raised in obscurity. And me," she whispered, "where do I fit in this grand plan of yours?" He met her gaze. "As my wife." The words fell between them like thunder. Charlotte stared at him, her heart hammering. "You would have me marry you again? After 6 years apart? After everything?" He stepped closer, his voice low and measured. "Our first marriage, though legal, was secret. The records destroyed when my father sought to erase you from our history. If you wish to secure your son's inheritance, their future, we must remarry. Properly, before witnesses. Before society." Charlotte rose, anger burning away her fear. "So this is your grand offer, James. A marriage of duty. A contract signed in ink, not love." "Love," he said quietly, "is a luxury I no longer believe in." The words cut deeper than any blade. She turned away, her breath shaking. You speak as if affection is weakness. Was I that to you once? A weakness? He moved behind her, his voice tightening. You were my salvation. But I learned that salvation does not survive the battlefield. Then why ask me at all? He hesitated, then said with brutal honesty, because I cannot lose you again, not to the law, not to scandal, not to the world. This, he gestured between them, is not what I imagined, but it is what must be. Charlotte faced him then, fire in her eyes. You think I will marry you because you command it? Because it is convenient for your title, and your conscience. He held her gaze, unflinching. No, Charlotte, because it is the only way I can keep you and our sons safe. The truth in his tone broke something inside her. She wanted to hate him. She wanted to walk away. But she had lived too long fearing what society could do to women like her. Widows without protection. Mothers without a name. And he was right. If she refused, the courts would strip her of everything. James took a step closer, lowering his voice. Say you'll do it. Not for me, for them. Tears welled in her eyes. You've turned our love into a bargain. He reached out, brushing his thumb across her cheek, the first tender gesture since his return. I've turned it into a promise. For a moment, neither moved. The air between them was heavy with everything unspoken. The love that once was, the pain that still lingered, the duty that now bound them. At last, she whispered, very well, I will marry you, my lord. But not because you ask it. Because I must. His expression softened, relief flickering behind restraint. Then we are agreed. She drew herself up, her dignity unbroken, even as her heart trembled. But understand this, James, you may have my hand, but you will not have my heart. Not yet. A shadow of a smile touched his lips. Then I will earn it. And for the first time since his return, she saw a trace of the man she had loved, the soldier who once wrote her letters filled with laughter and dreams. Maybe, just maybe, there was still something left to salvage. But as Charlotte left the room, James turned back to the fire, the flickering light revealing the haunted look in his eyes. Because while he had secured his wife's agreement, he knew he had not yet secured her forgiveness. The bells of Ravensby Chapel tolled softly through the morning mist. Inside, candles flickered against the cold stone walls, their light dancing over white flowers arranged with restrained elegance. The ceremony was small, by command of the Marquis himself, attended only by a few loyal friends, 2 wide-eyed boys, and a woman who could not decide whether her heart was breaking or healing. Lady Charlotte stood at the altar, her gown simple but dignified, ivory silk trimmed with lace she had mended herself. Across from her stood James, the Marquess of Ravensby, the man she had once loved, lost, and found again in a world forever changed. He watched her with the steady composure of a man used to battle, but when the vicar spoke the ancient vows, something in his expression softened, not pride, not possession, but reverence. I, James Harland, take thee, Charlotte Anne, to be my wedded wife. Her hands trembled when he slipped the ring onto her finger, the same band he had given her all those years ago, found and polished anew. When it was her turn, her voice caught, but she did not falter. I take thee, James, to be my husband. For better, for worse, for richer, for poorer. The words felt like both surrender and defiance. When the vicar pronounced them husband and wife, James leaned forward and kissed her, not with passion, but with solemnity, as though sealing a treaty rather than claiming a victory. Yet the touch lingered a heartbeat longer than decorum allowed. Henry and Arthur clapped softly, their innocent joy breaking the tension. Charlotte smiled faintly for them, if not for herself. The rest of the day passed in ceremony and silence. The servants bowed, the household whispered, and society prepared to receive the news that the Marquis had remarried his long-lost wife. But that night, in the quiet of their shared chamber, all the titles and duties fell away. Charlotte stood by the window, watching the moonlight spill over the fields, her thoughts heavy and uncertain. She heard him enter, the soft sound of boots on polished floor, the rustle of his coat as he set it aside. You haven't touched your wine, he said quietly. I have little taste for celebration, she replied. He came to stand beside her, close enough that she could feel the heat of his presence. This was never the life I wanted for you, he said, but it is the only way I know to protect you. And what of love? She asked softly. Does protection replace it now? He hesitated, the silence stretching between them. Then, with a sigh that seemed to carry years of weariness, he said, Love is what brought me back, Charlotte. But duty is what keeps me here. She turned to face him, tears glimmering in her eyes. I don't know if I can forgive you for turning our love into obligation. He reached for her hand, hesitant, almost afraid. I don't ask for forgiveness. Only time. For a long moment, they stood in the dim light, two souls bound by past and promise. Then, unexpectedly, Charlotte reached up and brushed her fingers against the scar on his cheek. War changed you, she whispered. But I see the man I loved still standing here, buried under grief and pride, perhaps, but still here. He caught her hand, pressing it to his heart. And I see the woman who once saved me, he murmured. You were my reason to survive, Charlotte. You always were. The distance between them vanished. The kiss that followed was nothing like the one at the altar. It was raw, aching, full of years lost and words unsaid. When they finally broke apart, breathless and trembling, there was no doubt left. Whatever their marriage had begun as necessity, duty, protection, it had become something real again, something fierce, something unbreakable. Outside, the bells of Ravensby tolled again, announcing a union the world might call strategic. But to those within its walls, it was a rebirth. Charlotte rested her head against his chest, feeling the steady beat of his heart beneath her palm. Welcome home, my lord, she whispered. He smiled a small, quiet smile that belonged not to the Marquise, but to the man she had once loved. Home, he echoed. At last, he had returned for his heirs, but found his heart instead. And she, who had once loved a soldier, now loved the man he had become.